I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Stelina. Together, we are moms to 5 children, including 2 sets of twins.
At Tweet Dreams, we are passionate about helping families achieve the peaceful night's rest they deserve because we were formerly overwhelmed and sleep deprived ourselves.
We love nothing more than helping families achieve their specific sleep goals,
so the whole family can be rested and thriving.
On this podcast, you'll not just hear about sleep-related topics. We'll chat about how it started,
where we are today,
and the experiences that have shaped us as mothers of twins.
We hope you'll enjoy listening to the ups and downs,
the highs and lows, and everything in between.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Twin Life with Tweet Dreams. It's us, Lindsay and Stelina, and today we want to chat about daycare in all aspects, finding a daycare, how to get your kids to nap at a daycare, picking out a daycare, all of the things, because we know that there's plenty of us, myself included, who had our kids in daycare, have our kids in daycare, or will at some point. And daycare, especially in the United States, is very popular because of how quickly moms go back to work, right? So I was back at work at 3 months postpartum, and we needed to find childcare. And daycare is a very, very viable, good option in the States. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. Let me just say that if we have twins, guys, we need to get on a wait list for a daycare, like even before your twins are conceived. Mm-hmm. Not that literal, but think about trying to find a spot for your twins as infants. And what I know is that an infant room at a daycare is typically going to be 3-to-1 or 2-to-1. So the ratio of, caregiver to babies is really high. And we want to make sure that we have room for your kids, right? I've shared before, we did a caregiver episode, that it took about close to 2 years for my kiddos to get into a public daycare. And I put them on the list the moment that we were essentially pregnant. So just to put that into perspective. Yeah. And if you want the daycare that you want, they're going to have a wait list, right? They're likely the best. You've vetted them many different ways. So the ones that you want are typically going to have a wait list. So let's just remember that and take that into consideration. Even if you don't think you will put your child in daycare or your twins in daycare, let's just put them on a list. When they call you, say, we don't need you. We don't need the daycare anymore. We found other accommodations. And then they're going to call the next person on the list. But I was thinking before we recorded this that maybe you thought that grandma was going to be okay to watch for extended amount of years, or this particular nanny was a really, really good fit. And then all of a sudden your situation changes. It's never a bad idea to just have something kind of on the back burner just in case, because we need childcare. If we're working, if we're not working, whatever the situation is, we need to have help for our kids if we want and need it. So I just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead and get yourself on a waiting list, and you won't regret that decision.
Totally, for sure.
So I know a couple things to think about when we're kind of vetting a daycare. Here's kind of the top things on my mind that said, is this a good fit for us? What are those kind of pros and cons? We might want to make a list. So for me, one was obviously we're going to get a licensed daycare that has a good reputation, no significant bad reviews on Google or the moms, local moms Facebook group. I mean, those are going to a local moms Facebook group is asking your peers for their personal experiences. And I think it's a good way, honestly, to find out if a particular daycare provider is good or bad. Okay. I wanted a daycare that was close to home. And so especially if you're a commuting parent going, 20 or 30 minutes into the city or longer, maybe you like would want extra time with your kiddos in the car or something. But I always thought like, let's keep them close to home, because when you pick them up in the afternoon, they're grouchy, they're ready to come home, they're tired. And also on the other end in the morning, like let's a 5 or 10, maybe a 15-minute commute is what I would recommend. And Selena, I know that you can agree with me that we've had plenty of clients who have daycare kiddos who are like that car ride. Like they want to take a nap, they want to fall asleep. It's messing up with like our dinner time and our bedtime. What are we supposed to do here? Because let's be honest, daycare naps are not like naps at home typically. So we're usually dealing with an overtired baby or twins in the beginning. So if we can find a daycare that's walkable, a short car ride, that would be something that I would suggest. Cleanliness, okay? And
that would be my number one.
Right. I mean, the moment that you go into someplace, like let's just see how it smells.
Oh, okay? Yes.
And I mean, let's be honest, a daycare is full of kiddos in diapers, so we're not going to judge them too harshly. But there's a difference between smelling bad and just kind of smelling like a little bit like a daycare, which I'm just saying from experience, okay? It has a good reputation, like I said, and that it's also very safe. We really need to worry about safety, of course, when it comes to our kids and how, like, for example, the building is secured, whether it's a school, daycare, or preschool. Typically, from my experience, we're working with some type of code or key card access. Mostly speaking, in my experience, it's going to be a key card access, because that's not something that you can share with someone, right? Versus like, oh, here's the code, et cetera, to get into the door. Mm-hmm. You have to have the key card to get in. And most schools in general are following this protocol. Stelina, I know you're kind of in the process of getting started with touring some like preschools for your twins. And that's obviously something that's very important to you. Yes. Was that your experience so far?
Yes. So we've only looked at a couple, but we have twins. So just trying to get ahead of the game here in case there's wait lists. And I will say I was pretty impressed with one, because I was definitely not entering through the correct door, because all the doors I tried to go in were locked. And I was like, oh, well, this is actually good. It's really hard for me to get in here. And then I went through the front door and it was this whole thing. I had to be buzzed in and all that. And I definitely liked that for sure. Just unfortunately, in today's day and age, I feel like that is something we really need to look at. And I would be pretty shocked if most schools in the US are not taking, a serious approach as it relates to security. So yeah, that's definitely something that I'm looking at when I look at schools for my kids. I want them to be safe.
Absolutely. So those are just a couple of things kind of off the top of our head, in my head, that I had thought about when picking a daycare. Also, every daycare should have a director. That's the person who oversees everything. And I always tell clients and plan, like, let's not just talk to the room leader. Let's also talk to the director, because the director is, like I said, over everything. She's typically got her, eyes in every room. And also caregivers, teachers rotate. They also don't work every day. So the teacher that you told on Monday might not be there on Wednesday. And all of those lovely tidbits that you gave her on your twins, like sleep schedule and feeding schedule, et cetera, she's not there. So that other lady's going to kind of just do what she thinks is best. So it's really helpful, I would say, to like print something out in addition to emailing something. I tell parents, you're an advocate for your child in this specific situation. So bug them, bother them, hey, this is kind of like what we need to be doing. I'm noticing it's not happening. Is there something that we can do better, work on? Always, always, always just try, because an infant room in the US, like in a publicly licensed daycare, should be following a child/parent-led schedule. Okay, in that first year. Once we get past a year, a lot of them are going to move to a clocked nap time, right? Not a whole lot we can do about that. Usually it's more so happening around 14 and 15 months, and or your child will be moved to that toddler room once they can walk. They want those toddlers to be toddling, so they're not going to put a crawler in that room. So, we do have some wiggle room there, but let's be honest, I've definitely talked to some moms who are like, nope, we're going to the toddler room at 12 months, regardless if we're walking. And I'm like, okay, like it is what it is. Like, let's not lose our heads over it. But it is common that once we're past a year, we're not following the baby's cues, parent schedules.
Right.
There's definitely some more uniformity going on at the older ages. So let's talk about how, kind of daycare relates to sleep, right? Let's say we're going in at 4 months, 9 months, 15 months, 22 months, whatever it is. Your child, for the most part, has been used to, the comforts of home, not a lot of stimulation, dark rooms, noise machine, sound machine, sleep sacks, the whole 9 yards, right? And before we started recording, Selena said, my son would never take a nap at a daycare. You said 100% sure.
Well, 99. I mean, let's give him 1%.
So sometimes I'm a betting woman, and I would probably put some money on it that he would. Okay. And I know this because when we think about, our toddlers going into this new experience for the very first time, you're like, that would never happen. But it happens mostly because of peer pressure, and they're being taken care of by a caregiver that is not their family member, their mom, their dad, grandma, nanny, somebody that they're really, really kind of emotionally connected to yet. And so they really kind of take what this person says as fact. Like, well, the lady says we're all supposed to lay down and take a nap, so everyone else is doing it. I'm going to go ahead and do that too. And it's really amazing how that happens. I started the daycare journey at 15 months, and on the very first day, they laid down and took a nap. Right?
Impressive.
100%. And these are kids who never did not sleep in a crib or pack and play with their sleep sack and their white noise, all of that. Okay. But let's think about an infant and even some of the bigger kids. What can we do to help them, one, sleep at all? Okay. If that's a thing, or B, sleep longer, because what we know about daycare naps is he sleeps 30 minutes like clockwork. And then he's up and he's crying, or he's up and he won't go back to sleep. And then we sleep another 30 minutes. And so now we've got 2 30-minute naps at daycare. Like, how crummy is that? So depending on the daycare, there's some things that you can do, and there's some things that are just completely out of the question. If it's an at-home daycare, the rules are much different, right? But if it's a center, the center is not allowed to have a dark room to where they can't see the kids, right? That would be weird if you thought about it, right? Because they want to have eyeballs on the babies and the kids. So we can't have a blacked out room like they're used to. They do shut the lights off, but it's like it's like lunchtime. So there's plenty of, sunlight coming in, but they're able to typically take a nap even in that type of environment. For like the littles in cribs, typically the daycare is going to have, mini cribs, pack and plays. Sometimes you can bring a sleep sack, right? So let's just have a sleep sack that we leave there. They send it home on Friday and we can wash it. We can also probably use white noise. It depends. Sometimes parents can send in like a travel sound machine. Sometimes the whole room just like has one kind of going at baseline. Other times they're like playing not nursery rhymes, but like lullabies. And you're like, okay, I don't love that. But, we can get used to it. So there are some things you can do to kind of like make it like comforts of home a little bit so that they can have a better time taking a nap. Hey, twin mom, we see you. When we say we get it, we really do. At Tweet Dreams, we are a team of sleep consultants who are also raising twins at home. Our twin sleep coaching packages are specifically tailored to your babies, making the journey of teaching independent sleep as stress-free as possible. Trust our years of experience working with twins so that you can feel relieved that the answers lie with us. Start by booking your free discovery call to learn more, because we can't wait to meet you and help you with your sleep goals. You can find the link to book your call in the show notes. Also, and this is what we tell clients and plan, like, let's print that ideal day that we give you off and show that to the daycare, because let's say you are not in an eat, wake, sleep cycle and your child goes down on a bottle, right? Now we're working with myself or Stelina, and now we're working on going it down without a bottle, okay, into the crib. Your daycare provider might not know that. And they're like, oh, we always feed Tommy to sleep like with his bottle, and then we rock him a little bit, we burp him, and then we place him down. It's very possible for Tommy to undo those habits at daycare as well. Just tell the daycare providers like, hey, this is what we're working on. This is really important to us. We're really working on to getting him sleeping through the night, etc. So he actually doesn't need to go down without a bottle. Are you okay if he like maybe he might whimper and cry for like a couple minutes, but you can like pat his bottom and see if we can break that association at daycare. It's totally worth a shot, right?
For sure, yeah.
Like, let's see. I mean, especially like I say, we're practicing this at home. They can practice it at daycare too and be much better at it than you might have originally thought they would be. So that's definitely some advice there, to mimic those routines at home at daycare as well, because it's just more practice and that's less things that you'll have to kind of work on in the future to undo. Mm-hmm. And daycares are usually typically willing to work with you. And I always say a caregiver really does want to be able to put the baby down. Like if we have a baby that needs to be held and rocked and consoled and fed continuously, they don't have their arms free, right? So if they are able to put that independent sleeper down, let's do it, right? I think they'll be willing to work with you, especially if you deliver the information in a very respectful way. I think you can be successful there. So let's talk a little bit about kind of going into the toddlers like we talked about before. Typically speaking, we'll be in an open cot somewhere around 12 to 15 months. Like I said, everybody's different. They're usually going to put them in that room when they start walking and we're in that toddler room. The thing that really threw me for a loop is that my twins had to sleep with their shoes on.
Ooh, I didn't know that. I think you told me that once. Yeah. I totally forgot about it.
Yeah. So the reason for that is in case of a fire, we have to have their shoes on so that everybody can get out and exit the room. So You're like, oh my gosh, you want them to do this, that, the other thing, and sleep with their shoes on? Yep. That's what we want them to do. And they will very, very, very likely do it, which is just amazing how quickly our kiddos can really like adapt. I mean, and a lot of times I hear that kids sometimes nap better at daycare than they do at home. And the reason for that is mom and dad aren't there.
Right.
Or, and toddlers are sometimes regressing with their naps at 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. So it's a very common kind of issue that we hear about, because like I said, they're at a very unbiased, arbitrary place where there's nobody there who will maybe, I don't know, rock them to give in, rock them to sleep, be, inconsistent, all the things that, parents are known for. So yeah, I do know that sometimes daycare is like a blessing, because they're like, oh, my 2-year-olds don't even nap at home. If they didn't nap at daycare, I don't even know what we would be doing. We would just be like so overtired, et cetera, et cetera. So on the other side of that, let's take a 3 or 4-year-old into account who may or may not need a nap every day. We're experiencing late bedtimes because of this really long daycare nap. So this is kind of more my territory where I'm working with toddler parents, and they're like, well, he doesn't go to bed till 9:30 or 10 because he sleeps until like 3:30 at daycare and he sleeps 2.5 hours. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we can do here and ask if, there's some exceptions can be made, because a 3.5-year-old napping 2.5 hours every day is kind of going to be a recipe for disaster when it comes to bedtime, especially if they're in an open bed, of course. So in the same situation, go ahead and reach out to the director and say, hey, Tommy just does not need to nap for like 2.5 hours. What's the best way to manage this? There's 2 ways you can do it. You can say, can he be the last one to be put down? So he's like the last one to finish his lunch. He's the last one to go potty. He's the last one to wash his hands. Everybody else is kind of like getting situated. All that does is kind of give us a little bit more time so that maybe he's not taking his nap at noon, which is a little bit kind of inappropriate for the age, early. So So he can go down closer to like 12:30 or 1. And then naturally it's capped because everybody's up by 3, for example. That is something we can work with. On the other end, they're like, nope, they put him down at 12. There's no exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Can they wake Tommy up after 90 minutes? Can we just like kind of gently rub his back, get him up, give him like a quiet activity to do? I find this one is less acceptable by the daycare because kind of if we wake a toddler up from their nap, are they in a good mood?
Don't do it, but you have to. But I wouldn't recommend it. I've had to do that the past couple of days at my own house, and I'm like, oh dear, gonna be in for it.
Mm-hmm. So I think that one's less acceptable and by the providers just because they're cranky, but it's not unheard of. I've seen plenty of people say, can you just only let him sleep 60 minutes? Can you let him sleep 90 minutes? Go ahead and like wake him up. He's okay. Because we can't have him sleeping that late in the afternoon. It just doesn't work for the family, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a viable option. Okay. Also, if we're in my situation in preschool, maybe Stelina, you'll be there eventually. Mm-hmm. Up until kindergarten, we are having a rest time, nap time. And I'm going to say that's pretty widespread in the US, state by state. It's a pretty uniform thing. Your teacher is likely in charge of, let's just say 20 or so 3 and 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. She likely has an aide or a helper.
God bless whoever that person is. I'm just going to shout that out. You're an angel.
They are special people. They are very special people. My daughter is obsessed with her preschool teacher. Good. Still to this day. She loves that woman. There's a special place in her heart for sure. But that's those ladies' lunch. That's their break. Okay. So we do have to respect that and know that the kids are getting down for their nap. These ladies are overstimulated and the kids do need to rest. My kids have a late birthday. So they're born in October, meaning they were every bit over 5.5 when they were still in pre-K.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does my 5.5-year-old need to take a nap? No, she does not. Okay. And I worked with this preschool teacher as best as I could. I wrote it all over their forms. The twins do not need a nap. The twins do not need a nap. If they nap, I will know it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, we'll do the best that we can because it was a mixed bag of ages. There was 3, 4s, and 5s in there. So some of the kids needed the nap. My kids did not. She's like, okay, no problem. I'm going to put their mat next to my desk. And I'll try to disengage with them as much as I can to kind of keep them from dozing off. I also would send them a little like bag of goodies or like activities to do during nap time, rest time, sticker books, I Spies, coloring books, you name it. And it was able to keep them, awake and stimulated through the rest time. And then typically speaking, if a child is still awake after 45 minutes into the rest time, they will let them get up and do a quiet activity because the teachers have now changed. Mm-hmm. And like the one's back from lunch and she's like, okay, whoever's not asleep can get up and like draw. I mean, sometimes this is based off of behavior as well.
Right.
If your kid's, not having some outbursts or behavioral issues, they might be, or, they can tell they don't need the nap and they're okay. Otherwise they're not melting down and having a tantrum. Those all things kind of they would take into account and that they can discuss with you. Right. So yeah, I was so happy going into kindergarten. I never had to worry about a nap anymore. And I know there's a lot of moms thinking like, what? Like, I can't even imagine the day that my kids don't nap. And I've told you, Stelina, that nap-free days are like really amazing. And you will feel so free from them and you won't have to worry about them anymore. And I loved it. Like I loved it when my twins stopped napping. We had early bedtime again. It just like really worked for us. So yeah, let me think what else.
I have a couple of questions for you. Just speaking from the other side, my children are not in daycare. We have a nanny, so that's a different situation. But I guess, did you have any anxiety about your twins' sleep before they were in daycare, maybe in the beginning? I know I'm a control freak when it comes to my kids' sleep, and I feel like, we're very similar. So tell me how you were feeling about it.
Well, yeah, like I just shared, that going nap free, dropping the nap was like a really amazing experience for me, because at the end of the day, naps really stressed me out. Like, especially when we get into 2s and 3s, like you need a nap, you need your nap. Like, why didn't you nap? Like, I remember it was like Christmas and we had picked them up from daycare and we were going out to dinner with some friends. And most daycares are going to work like on a app. Not all of them, but some of them, where you're going to get daily, hourly updates. Oh, Bryn pooped. Oh, she's eating lunch. Okay, now she's taking her nap. And I remember that day I just didn't get the notification that she took a nap. I thought it was like an error. And no, she just laid there and played the whole time. And I remember crying. Yeah. Like, I used to cry a lot. Still, I cry sometimes. And I'm like, she didn't take her nap. And what are we going to do? And my husband's like, what? We're just going to like go to dinner and then we're going to come home and we're going to put her to bed. Like, what's the problem? And I'm like,
this is a disaster. I know.
You guys get it. Like, the whole spiral effect of like something has been ruined when nothing has been ruined, you know? So that, I think, had me a lot of anxiety. I've talked to a lot of moms, and Selena, you have as well. When we're putting our infants in daycare, we are 100% anxious about their naps, right? Of course. And especially when we're working with a daycare who's like trying, but not really. And you're like, gosh, why? Like, they're not supposed to nap until 1:30. Why are you putting them down at 12:05?
So
like,
frustrating.
This doesn't make any sense. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. And, you know, that part is really hard. I think kind of what, in a hindsight sort of way, I do feel like starting daycare was good for me, in that it was sort of out of my control.
Right.
And that was helpful for somebody who was like uber micromanaging sleep. Okay. Like, let's be honest. I struggled with that. We've talked about our sleep anxiety. So if you're listening to this and you're in that same boat, I totally understand you. There's only so much we can do. And even if we have a tough day, everything's going to be okay. I promise. Right. And we're just kind of in this season, and they're going to get older and everything's going to be okay. So that's kind of what got me through. I mean, was it pretty? Not really, but I survived, and
it's all good.
You know, I'm kind of like, yeah, it's totally all good. Yeah. What else?
I guess just to end on this point, what would be your number one piece of advice? I know we just basically talked about so many points, but your number one piece of advice. Your kids are already in daycare. What's your number one piece of advice overall, right? As far as having kids in daycare? I know that's a really broad question.
No, that's okay. I would say definitely get to know the teachers, because if the teacher knows you, she knows you, and she knows your kids, and she likely loves your kids. So typically speaking, you know, you might have an app and I'm going to be honest, we went through a lot of our daycare during COVID. Okay. And I wasn't even allowed to walk them to the classroom. And there's some people listening to this who might be able to empathize with me. That was really, really, really hard. You want to walk your kid to the classroom, say goodbye, see the teacher, look her in the eye. Hey, how are you? Good morning. You know, how's it going? We couldn't do any of that. And so I felt that was like a big kind of missed opportunity, or just my experience during that time. So I would say get to know the teachers. They are the advocate for your child on the other side. If you're wondering about lunch, or you're wondering about what they're eating, or you have a question about snack time, or if we can make an exception, or if we can do this, that, or the other thing, ask her, right? This is somebody who's taking care of your child for many hours a day. And same with you, Selena. If you had let's say you had an issue, you had a question, or you had a recommendation, you would go up to your nanny and say, hi, this is what we're doing. You know, can we change this up? We're going to do this. So that is my best advice. It's a little bit tough because in a licensed public daycare, sometimes there's a lot of turnover, and I hate that, right? You get to know, you know, the teacher, and then she's not in that class anymore, or she's not working there anymore. That's tough. but just do the best that you can, get to know who's taking care of your kids, and just be an advocate. That's basically my best advice.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice.
Thank you. Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. It's near and dear to my heart, seeing that I had my kids there for many, many years. And you know what's best for your child. If you're feeling like a daycare situation, but because of any reason it's not working, look into other providers, move them into a preschool setting once they're ready. We were in a daycare that was hybrid preschool daycare, and I just didn't feel like the preschool setting was as up to snuff as I thought it could have been. So we made the decision to put them into like our public school system pre-K, and that was like the best decision I made too. So just do your research, ask your friends, look on Facebook, and get on that waiting list, okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Hope this was helpful. We love you guys so much. Thanks for listening every single week. Give us a follow on Instagram. We're here for your sleep needs, your toddler needs, your infants, your twins. We do it all. So happy to chat with you guys when you're ready. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. If you liked this episode and conversation, be sure to leave a review or rating. Share it with a friend on social media or a family member. It's our goal to reach as many parents of multiples and singletons alike. You're not alone in your parenting journey. If you'd like to hear about a specific topic or have an episode idea, please feel free to message us. We're here to help.